This episode is brought to you by the Software Report, a leading information source on software companies and solutions. Today, we speak with Luca Cartechini, co-founder and CEO of ShopCircle, a technology group building AI-powered software that supports the core operations of modern enterprises. ShopCircle scales mission-critical B2B products from launch to market leadership, embedding AI to automate workflows, turn data into action, and drive growth. Luca began his career in equity research at Jefferies, covering European technology companies, and later worked in venture capital before founding ShopCircle in 2021. Since then, the company has raised more than $150 million from investors, including NFX, QED, Nextalia, 645 Ventures, and more, and now serves over 130,000 customers worldwide. I'm your host, RJ Lumba. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you liked the episode, click to follow. Luca, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. It's a delight to be with you.
Thank you, RJ. Thanks for having me.
Very excited to get started here. You have an interesting background. You didn't necessarily start out as a tech entrepreneur, but you found your way to entrepreneurship and you've done a good job at growing your company. So maybe for the benefit of the audience, tell us about kind of the earlier part of your career and then what led you to founding ShopCircle.
Sure, happy to do that, RJ. So you're right, I'm not a technical founder, so-called technical founder. I haven't studied engineer and I wasn't a developer, although I was always close to tech during my career. So I started my career working for an American investment bank as an equity research analyst where I was covering TMT. And more specifically, internet companies in Europe. That bank is called Jefferies. So I was covering names that people in Europe would know better, but such as Zalando, Ocado, Boohoo, and a few other names. And the internet penetration back then, 2016, was very high in Europe. That was before COVID. And so I always got an interest in that space, work on a number of IPOs as well, but more from a financial side. Later on, I decided that providing recommendation was a bit too boring for me, so I wanted to jump on the other side of the table and actually make decisions on investments. So I stayed in the technology sector, but I moved to a venture capital firm focusing on seed and Series A investment, mostly across infrastructure, tool, and B2B software. We closed several investments, and then at some point, now 4.5 years ago, I decided to join forces with my co-founder that comes more from an operational background, and we created ShopCircle. So that's the brief history of how I got there.
And we'll get further into the company and the solutions it provides, but I'm curious of how you found the transition from investment banking, VC, then to being an entrepreneur. Did you find that what you were doing day to day and how you had to think and how you had to operate had to change dramatically?
Yeah, it's completely different, RJ, because you're actually building something, right? Rather than providing recommendation on certain companies like I was doing in equity research or investing minority investments, so a minority shareholder, right? When you start a company on your own, you have to do a bit of everything, right? You need to become, especially early on when you don't have a team, you need to be an expert of payroll, how to start a company, negotiating with VC investors, hiring, launching the product, speaking to clients. And so it's very, very different. But at the same time, I think it's probably an advantage to be relatively young and not to be 25, 30 years into your career, because at that time, you're still generic enough and not specialized enough into different things. So I wasn't carrying with myself the burden of a 25 years old experience in consulting or in banking that then made you very specialized on certain things. And on top of that, I had, and I still have, a great co-founder and early stage team. So even if we were only 3-4 people at the very beginning, we're still splitting the task between the 3-4 of us. But yeah, the job is very different and more intense, I would say, simply because, you tend to care a bit more about things when you start them on your own and you're part of a smaller organization. And so the job is different, although at the same time, I do think that it's very helpful to have an experience in a larger organization, to understand the ways of working, to start getting some domain expertise. So if I had to do it again, I would probably do it the same way. So get 5 to 8 years of experience somewhere and then start something on your own.
And tell us about your co-founder. How did you first meet, and how were you comfortable in knowing that you two would partner well together?
Sure. So we actually were best friends, and I like to think that we are still best friends despite working very closely together. So we went to business school together 13 years ago now. Then we took different paths. I was more on the finance side, and he was more on the operational side of things. So he was working as a category manager for Amazon. And at some point, we were similar phases of our career. We didn't have too much to lose because we didn't have family or many commitments. 6, 7 years into our jobs, and we decided to complement our skills and launch something that it was right in the middle of our expertise.
And sometimes when friends get together and they start working on a business, the dynamic changes. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder because it's easier because you know the person, you know how to interact together. But did you find that kind of transition into working as business partners? It had to be intentional. You had to be more thoughtful about how you went about doing that.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of that, RJ. You need to be careful in the transition. At the same time, it's something so important. You're gonna spend so much time together that you need to trust that person a lot, right? And it's difficult to trust someone that you've never worked with, that you don't know that person from an integrity perspective. What are his values? So I'm always like very skeptical when it comes to acceleration or incubation processes that just match randomly two people that never work together just based on the skill set. Reality is that there is much more than just skills and practical expertises, right? So it's challenging, but obviously as the company evolves, then you focus on different things. So you don't have to share every single decision. I think so. That's probably the most important takeaway, having authority and ownership across different work streams so that you don't have to discuss the same decision like the two of you all the time. And the second point is, it's true, right? There are a lot of reasons to disagree, but at the same time, it's better to disagree with someone that you trust completely rather than someone that you've just met.
Mm-hmm. Let's jump into Shop Circle. Tell us about the solutions you provide and your target markets.
Sure. It's several solutions, right? So because we are a software group providing now more than 30 solutions. So it's difficult to summarize in one sentence. But in short, we're building the first AI-powered software group at scale. And our mission is pretty simple, RJ. We acquire the best mission-critical products, centralize the heavy lifting usually founders of this company don't want to do, and supercharge everything with AI so business grow faster, run leaner, and operate smarter. We started 4.5 years ago with a smaller acquisition, and now fast forward Shop Circle by 4 years, we raised $90 million of equity, plus pretty much the same in debt. We raised capital from all over the world, so European tier one investors, American tier one investors, always increasing a little bit our valuation. And we serve 130,000 businesses globally across different spaces as well. So on one hand, we have what we call business application, which are usually revenue driving tools such as upselling software, cross-selling, reviews management, and guided selling as well. And then we also have a business unit which focus more on the back end. So search, data, integration layers such as API management tools that keep clients stable and scalable across different platforms as well. So that's what we do. There is a lot of buy and build involved. So like I mentioned that we started with a small acquisition, and now as of today, we closed 16 different acquisitions, always in the B2B software space. And we have a team of 300 people basically serving clients of all size globally.
I see. So is it the case that when your clients are interacting with your company, they could be interacting with one of your brands? And so they could essentially buy 3 different products under 3 different brand names from your company.
Yeah, there is a common infrastructure which is the same. So usually we tend to centralize everything which is boring for the founders to do, meaning payroll, HR, controlling, accounting, finance. But then the products can be relatively independent from each other. Then we also have a lot of products that share the same infrastructure. For instance, we did consolidate a few solutions in the Shopify space. So they do have a Shopify storefront, and then they can choose across our apps. But then we also have products that are completely different, more on the infrastructure space, so backend that I mentioned before, such as API management tool, and maybe like data centralization as well. So you're right. It depends on which platforms we are focusing for the specific tools that we operate. But generally speaking, we let the tools underlying Shop Circle live on their own, and then we superpower them with specific functions.
And so do you have a mix of acquired solutions as well as homegrown solutions, or are the majority acquired?
The majority are acquired, but most of the times, the team that join us, they also created solutions before. And we have a team that focus on improving these apps 10x, usually when it comes to launching more features, launching AI-enabled features as well, improving the customer support, and a bunch of other things. So the idea is most of the times take something which has already passed the product market fit. So like, let's say they reach 2-3 million ARR, they're technical founders, they're very good at doing what they're doing, but they need something else to scale up. And that's usually when they join Shop Circle, and we like to build on top of something that is already existing, working with sticky clients, and we add our superpower to that. So the majority of the tools are something that we have acquired, but we don't like just to keep them alive. We like to accelerate significantly the pace of product innovation after the acquisition. And we have many metrics to prove that. And now with AI, and the adoption of LLM has become much easier as well to provide efficiencies in terms of like launching new features, because most of the times these tools were more legacy driven, and all of a sudden they join a larger platform where there is a team dedicated to potentially like to improve the features of these tools through AI as well.
Mm-hmm. And tell us a little bit more about geography in terms of, I guess, both the brands under your corporation as well as the clients you serve. Is it all over Europe?
It's actually like all over the world in terms of clients that we serve, because, for instance, on Shopify, the distribution is global, right? By definition. So you're part of an app store and clients can subscribe to the tools from all over the world. Now, to be more specific, pretty much like 50%, 45% of the revenues comes from the United States and North America. Another like 25, 30% come from Europe, so Western Europe, namely United Kingdom, Germany, Italy, Spain, France, and the Nordics as well. And then the remaining part is really coming from all over the world. And it's also like the customer base that is growing the fastest for Shop Circle, but like mostly South America and Southeast Asia as well. That's on the customer side. Then when it comes to our products, it's relatively similar. So far, we made acquisition mostly in Europe, where we're based. The company is obviously London-based, and we have an office in Sarajevo as well, in Bosnia, in Italy, Milan, and North America as well. So we made acquisition in the US in the past.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting, because presumably you have a long way to go in terms of looking at various software companies around the world and seeing if they fit under your rubric. Is that the plan? Is it you have currently 16 or so, and then you're planning to get to, continuously kind of evaluate prospects to acquire?
Yeah, correct. We have a corporate development team, RJ, which is fully dedicated to that. And it's not a new business model, right? So if you look at Europe, most of the successful cases in the tech space were acquisitive companies. Mm-hmm. So Italy, where I originally come from, you can tell that from my accent, the largest cases and success stories are acquisitive companies, what they call roll-up. There is a company called Pending Spool. It's a huge inspiration for us. They focus on consumer products, always in the software space. They started on iOS apps, and now they're worth about $10 billion. They've been around for 12, 13 years. Then the next big tech IPO in London will be a company which is called Visma. They centralize financial tools in software space always. And then in North America, you have more than 10, 15 listed names which have, more than 10 billion valuation, and they all focus on the software space. So it's a proven business model, a very liquid asset class. And you're right. So we recently closed an additional round. We have about $100 million to deploy over the next 12 months. And we're looking for tools with sticky customer base in the verticals that I mentioned before, and usually with more than 2-3 million ARR. So we have at the moment a team of 7 people split between origination, so people that actually source the deals for us, and then people that focus on execution and integration after the acquisition. Is a core part of our business model. Organic growth is very important for us. We like to keep organic growth relatively high, but then we also enjoy some growth coming from mergers and acquisition. And that's part of our DNA. We know how to do it well, and we'll continue to do it over the coming years.
And just to touch a little bit on your investors, you mentioned them at the start, it's a good group that you have. What's some of the value that they've brought to you aside from the financial capital?
Yeah, look, we have a very diverse and also diversified investor space. So we raised 5 equity rounds over the last 4 years, RJ. Despite, the multiples, and you know that because been speaking with a lot of software companies, the multiples have compressed significantly in the software space over the last 4 years and a half. But despite that, we always managed to increase the valuation and attract great investors to the company. So it's very different because as you grow, the profile of the investors also change. At the beginning, they were more focused on how to foster the culture of the company, how to attract the best employees. And now they're much more driven on KPIs, how to get ready for potentially an IPO at some point in the future, how to optimize the acquisition process and the post-acquisition integration plan. So they're very different. We do have great investors in the US. I think the most important for our journey have been NFX, where the founder that is sitting on our board is Pete Flint. He was the founder of Trulia that sold to Zillow for a multi-billion amount. And so he literally went all the way from, starting a company to doing an IPO and then selling it for a very high amount. And is the perfect example of someone that we can call and ask for an advice for anything because he's seen the whole journey. And then we have QED, where they are more fintech, usually former executive in the banking sectors, where they're much more focused on specific things such as M&A or raising equity and raising debt. So they usually help us on that. So it depends very much. And now we recently got a growth equity investor based out of Europe called Nextalia. And they also bring a different mentality because they obviously tend to work with later stage companies. And so they help us to prepare for what's next, right? So it really depends. But I think we were lucky enough to have great investors from the beginning of the journey, not have one investor owning the majority of the cap table. We went down the VC journey and the VC route. So giving away 20% of the capital pretty much or a bit less as we grow on every single round. And that also helped us to have different people focusing on specific works, right? So I don't like to just have investor providing recommendation on everything. We tend to basically categorize different investors based on their expertise and ask questions mostly related to this expertise.
Excellent. Last 2 questions. One is, and this veers towards the more personal, but can you tell us about a person who has had a profound influence on you?
Look, I think my dad had a profound influence on me. Has always been an example of resilience throughout all my life. Middle class in Italy, not having access to, expensive education, but he managed to always improve himself despite the limited resources. And he taught me a lot about approaching business in different ways, never giving up despite, the odds might be stacked against you. And also in terms of approaching life, thinking and remembering that there is more outside business, right? There is the family and much more that sometimes also help you to stay grounded and perform better as a CEO. I think I would say him rather than mentioning any big names like people usually do.
Last question. Can you tell us about a charity, cause, or other endeavor that you're passionate about?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about giving back to the entrepreneur ecosystem. So I'm part of several organization. One, for instance, is called Endeavor, which is an organization helping and fostering entrepreneurship in emerging markets. So they focus mostly on South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. And they've been very active, coaching, helping entrepreneurs whenever is possible. Also investing small tickets in regions which are underserved. Because I really think that nowadays, RJ, with AI, generally the cost of like starting a company coming down, entrepreneurship has never been so accessible. What is like not so accessible sometimes are access to resources, coaching, mentorship, and capital as well. So there were things that is the biggest gap to start company in this region. But once you get across these obstacles, then probably the upsides are even larger, right? Because there is much less competition from an investor perspective, and the markets are very large. If you look at some of the countries in Southeast Asia, Africa, and South America, there is growing population, huge demographics in terms of like size, several countries above 100 million of people plus. Obviously, I don't have too much time to do angel investing as much as I would like, because in order to do it seriously, you really need to spend time understanding the company, getting to know the founders. And for me, Shop Circle is more than a full-time job, but at some point I would like to do it more actively.
Well, Luca, I want to thank you again for taking the time for this conversation. It's been a wonderful one.
My pleasure, Jay. Thanks for having me today.